With traditional combustion engines, you need more air to make more power. The amount of power a combustion engine produces depends on how much fuel it can burn and how good it is at turning that heat into mechanical force. Now, with a naturally aspirated engine, the only way the engine can get air is through the suction created on the downstroke of each piston, but it can only suck so much air. That's where forced induction comes in. You are forcing more air into the intake. The more air you have, the more fuel you can burn and the more power your car can make. But there are different ways to achieve this, and we are going to discuss them both today and see which one is the best. So let's start with turbochargers, because they are the most common way used. Turbos are genius. You see, with a turbo you use the exhaust gases your car makes to spin a turbine. That then spins a compressor wheel that sucks air in. That is the basic idea. So as the RPMs climb, your car will produce more exhaust gases and the turbo will spin faster. The faster the turbo spins, the more air it can push into the manifold. But you don't want too much air in the motor, because the more air, the higher your chances of pre-detonations or ping in the motor. How do you keep the pressures under control? A wastegate. So the wastegate sits between the engine and the turbo, and it's basically a controlled leak. So as soon as the turbo reaches its target boost, the wastegate will open, allowing air to escape, thus stopping the turbo from spinning even faster. So that's how everything works. Let's talk pros and cons. Cons of using a turbocharger to make power. Depending on the size of your turbo, you might have lag. Now if you have a very small turbo, the amount of absolute power you will be able to make out of said turbo won't be crazy, but you will have very minimal lag. However, increasing the turbo size means you can move more air, but it also means you need more air to spin it, so you will have way more lag. For instance, my personal car, I have a big single turbo BMW, and she has no power below 4000 RPM, but as soon as that thing gets spinning, she pulls hard. And I know I am sacrificing response and low down torque for top end power, but that's what the car is built for, just speed. But for everyday car, you need a bit of torque just to improve how the car feels just in everyday driving. Now there are ways around this where you can have a lot of power and a lot of torque. Just add more turbos. You can run more than one smallish turbo. Let's say you have a V8. You can have one turbo on each bank, so one turbo running off of 4 cylinders on each side. This will give you minimum lag and a good amount of power. Another way is running a sequential turbo setup. We have a small turbo for the low down power and then a big one that picks up on the higher end of the ref range. Both of these help reduce lag and you will be able to make quite a bit of power. But there is another way, moving to superchargers. So where a turbo relies on engine gases to work, a supercharger is belt driven straight from your crankshaft. So there is no lag. As long as the engine is turning, the supercharger is spinning. So power is there at an instant, from low revs anywhere in the RPM range. But because the supercharger is driven by the motor, it steals a bit of power that could have been sent to the wheels. And where turbo gets better and better as the revs climb, a supercharger siphons more and more power as the revs climb. And because the engine has to run the supercharger, supercharged vehicles tend to be more uneconomical, and this is the main reason you don't see many cars supercharged from factory. They have more emissions and use more fuel. A turbo spins as a byproduct of the engine working, so it doesn't really use any power, it just adds it, where a supercharger does use a bit of power to add power. Now I have to add, if you have a really big turbo, it does also take away a bit of power. Just because it restricts the airflow, you see, before it spools up, it's actually a blockage of air, so the car struggles to get more air. So a really big turbo in a car isn't always, like I said, it's purpose built in. It's going to be really heavy on fuel, it's going to have lag, it's not going to have a lot of torque down low, it's just built for speed. Yeah. So which one is better, turbo or supercharger? The best for your average sports car is a turbocharger. As long as the turbos aren't too big, lag is minimal, and with bigger engines you can add more turbos. And another reason why turbos are used so commonly is because they make cars more economical. You can take a really small economical engine, add a turbo, and then when you're just cruising on the highway, the turbo is not even being used, so it's almost using no gas at all. It's just sipping little droplets of fuel. But when you put your foot down, there's a turbo to help you, so that the small, really weak engine feels like a bigger engine while using almost no gas. Now if you're going to keep your foot flat the whole time and the turbo is going to spin, it will use the same amount of fuel as a big engine. But just cruising along, not using the turbo, it's going to be much lighter on fuel and create less emissions. So that's the differences between turbo and supercharger. that's the reason why everybody uses turbos rather than superchargers, because like fuel is a big thing these days. But let me know what you guys think. Do you like turbos? I love them because they sound awesome. They make noises, and also superchargers has got that whine. I mean, that's also pretty great. If you guys enjoyed the video, found it informative, leave a like, subscribe, go through my videos. I've got much more stuff. There must be something you like. I'll check you guys in the next one. Cheers.
See here, kid. You gotta just go for it. Don't think about what comes after or what came before. You just gotta bend your knees